are back here on Issues and Answers on WLTH 1370 AM. And we just talked about the Melvin Boulare case, and really, really a lot of our. You there with me, Rev?
Oh yeah, I'm here.
Okay, I just want to make sure you had that commercial break was kind of long. But yeah, since this pandemic has started, but even before that, because I remember I did cover here on WLTH when Anthony Bourdain committed suicide. I definitely covered this culture of despair that we've been in, and the pandemic has apparently made a lot of things worse. Because in a large study published by the JAMA Psychiatry Board on February 3rd, that analyzed 190 million emergency department visits, they found that significantly higher rates of emergency room visits for opioid overdoses during the months from March to October 2020 were when compared against the same dates in 2019. They found that from April onwards, the weekly rates of emergency room visits from drug overdoses increased by 45% when compared to the very same time period in 2019. Visits for opioid overdoses were up 20. Overall, visits for opioid overdoses were up almost 30% for the whole year. And the CDC has said that in December, that the rate of overdose deaths were accelerating during this pandemic, driven by synthetic opioids, which rose by 38% during the year up to June 2020. And so I know a lot of people. I know you're a member of the clergy, Rev. Like when you hear stories about despair and the and obviously overdose deaths and things like alcoholism and suicide, these things all go hand in hand. How do you see it?
You mean how do I see how our communities
Yeah,
are
our,
adjusting to
yeah,
this?
our society, our community is
Yeah,
yeah.
there's a whole lot of things that are playing out now. I mean, for example, 100 years ago, the last pandemic that we had to deal with, the church was a major uh, actor in society.
Hmm.
People drew, close to their pastors, to their congregations, to be comforted, to be encouraged, to have needs met. Well, 100 years later, people have been raised and taught to think that God is at best an irrelevant uh, conversation topic.
Right.
Other than those few people that are raised up in church or, have had a crisis event in their lives that they can attribute its resolution to divine intervention, most people have been raised to live as if there is no help for them in God if He's even there.
Right.
So we don't have that. We have something happening in the natural realm. See, that just makes it worse. If this had been the result of an earthly enemy, like if this had been some sort of biological attack, we could address it.
Right.
We could deal with the nation or the terrorist group that poisoned our water or infiltrated our air or however this would have gotten spread. We could deal with that. But you can't deal with disease
Mm.
in that way. Even the things that people complain about, well, why don't we have a national policy? So that presupposes that our society is set up that way. The reality is, according to our laws in this country, the only time the president has that kind of power is when war is declared.
Right.
And he has to get permission from Congress to declare war.
Right.
We're not set up for that.
We are not. Let me get this caller really quick. We have a caller. Hello, caller.
Hi, this is Bill K. Gentlemen,
Hi, Bill.
hello, both y'all. I want to compliment you on the breadth and variety of your topics on the radio. I was editor-in-chief of a university newspaper in 1973, and I opened the paper up, and so did the people that worked with me and for me, to diversity. And you have a diverse show, and you're raising the standards of electronic journalism with your format.
Well,
and
thank
I want to give you a lot of credit for being well researched to the point, and also the breadth of the topics that you deal with are great. Opioids. Hey, I looked at the RAND study on emergency room visits in the United States for 2019. Indiana has the highest emergency care costs in the United States. The average emergency room visit, that's just a visit. We're not talking about admittance to the hospital, doctor's fees, is $2,200. In Arkansas, Rhode Island, and Michigan, it's $900.
Wow.
Now, we got to start looking at that because so many people aren't plugged into the Affordable Care Act. They so-called slept through the cracks in an avalanche. So you got millions of people that must depend on the emergency room, and they're being taken to the cleaners.
Oh, yeah.
Terrible. Now, I mean, that's one of the things you talked about today, but the diversity of your show is great. I did the same thing with the university newspaper about 49 years ago, or tried to do it in the print media, because that's what I was schooled in, was journalism, print media. You have journalistic standards, plus you have a wide breadth of cultural commentary. And that's what it's all about for quality radio. And I'm glad you're a beacon to reestablish quality radio, because since the FCC abolished the Fairness Doctrine, the Federal Communications Commission in 87, the radio has been awash with garbage.
Right.
It really has.
Right.
And the tradition of people like Rush Limbaugh established what is called non-thinking radio. It's called emotional response radio. You go for people's emotions when necessary, when there's egregious things that you bring out on your show that really need to get people fired up. They get fired up because of the information that you provide them and the facts, not because you're trying to egg them on or instigate like Trump did with a mob action on January 6th. So I want you to all to keep learning like you will. You'll even get better. Practice makes perfect. When I was editor of the paper, I had my ups and downs. I had to report to a publications board. I had 5 students, 6 students, 2 professors, and 1 administrator. And believe me, sometimes they didn't like what I did, and they would give me a lot of heck. But the thing was, I always stood for academic freedom. I had diversity and academic freedom, and the truth will out. Eventually, the people on the newspaper were able to responsibly publish their stuff, their points of view, plus document it, and we raised the level of the newspaper, in my opinion. Also, we got the 42 staff members paid by advertising revenue, because the advertisers liked it too, because they saw a little bit of everything in the newspaper, rather than the old-time conservative rah-rah stuff. And you men are raising broadcast standards. And I want you to continue to do it, and you're building an audience. I know me and my associates always listen to it. If I listen to most all your broadcasts, but if I don't, you happen to be busy at that time, my associates do.
Well,
so you always got a listening audience. You always will. And keep on that control of that microphone, and the Lord willing, the creek don't rise. You continue your good work.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Bill, for calling. And stick around. We're going to talk about media standards very soon. Coming up in this next hour, we're going to tackle that. Thank you for your call. But yeah, we were talking about the opiate crisis, Rev, and I really wanted to know exactly.
Oh yeah, I didn't finish my thought.
Oh yeah. Oh,
yeah,
go ahead, finish that. Go ahead, finish that.
So now, for example, I'm a pastor, And believe it or not, pastors get stressed too. The Lutheran Church Missouri Synod just recently uh, spent money so that pastors could go to a conference called Doxology, which is designed to help guys who are getting burnt out and wore out to get their strength back and get their perspective back. And be amazed how much stress there is on a bunch of guys who have been trained to be comforters, to be encouragers, to watch over people, to shepherd people who are suddenly put in a position of being unable to do what they're trained to do, or being told by people who have no training in their area how to do their job.
Right.
I don't tell the president how to do his job. I don't tell the governor how to do his job. I don't even tell the mayor how to do his job. I only ask the mayor to see about getting those trees cut down in the alley behind my house. Stop it. Anyway, but all I'm saying is, this is what I'm trained to do, and now it's hard to do it. So, if we're struggling, what are the congregants going to be doing? The things that they have been taught to how to operate, what the church is supposed to be for them, and be there for them in the various ways. What can you say when government officials are doing things, telling you that they're doing it for the public interest, but in actuality they've got one eye on the next election? Because in reality, that's what their purpose for being. Once you win an election, your purpose for working from that moment on is to win the next election.
Mm-hmm.
How many politicians do you know of that ran for an office, said, I'm going to serve one term, I'm going to do whatever I can in one term, and then I'm going to go back to my other job?
Yeah, that really doesn't happen. That doesn't happen often.
It doesn't. I know, in recent memory, I remember reading that Mayor Thomas Barnes served one term, and I asked him about it, and he said that he had to let that stuff go, or it got too much for him to deal with. And so, but he didn't go into office saying, I'm just going to serve one term.
He did not.
He did not. So we have a society where God has been pushed to the side, where our political structures clearly can't handle things. Well, what are people to do? Who are they to turn to?
Right. I agree. We got to get into this, the local hour coming up here. We'll be right back after this short musical break on Issues and Answers. WLTH 1370 AM. That phone number is 219-885-1371. That phone number again is 219-885-1371. We'll be right back after this.